Try to read.
Hi everybody, this is Wendy here, and welcome today to an exclusive video, an exclusive live for members of the Ultimate HMO Success System group. So thank you ever so much for joining me today. Now I'm doing this on Wi-Fi. I've got a tripod with my camera on it, but sometimes the signal isn't brilliant in this part of the house. So forgive me if it fails. If we drop out, I will reconnect. But ultimately, if it all goes horribly wrong, I'll do a recording and post it up to the group later on. So first of all, thank you very much for joining me today. I know there's a lot of confusion flying around at the moment for people like you and me who are investing in property and are maybe questioning what is going to be help, what help is available to you, what is the help that the government have released, and how can it work for you. So I've been doing some research, and today is really a presentation to share with you those areas that you could benefit from. If, like me, you're a property investor, you invest mainly through a limited company and you take dividends as income. Now, I just must say, first of all, before we start, that I am not an accountant, I'm not a certified financial advisor, I'm not FCA regulated. So anything that I share with you today is knowledge that I've gleaned from my research and my investigations into what is already made available to the general public. In fact, I'm sure that you may have some additional advice, information and help that you could add into this group, and I'd love to hear it. So I'm not here to give you personal financial advice. This is more just to help you piece together those areas which you may have already heard bits of, but now you want to create a fuller picture for yourself to understand what you can access in these very difficult times of the coronavirus pandemic. So first of all, it's worth having a look at the two different types of business which the government are using, but again, they haven't been very clear about, to differentiate what we do as property investors from what ordinary self-employed people do. And I've drawn a little diagram to illustrate it. So down here, you can probably see this. We've got the self-employed, and the government are talking about trading businesses. So if you run a trade, like a painter and decorator, or you are maybe a carpet fitter, you're self-employed, then that would be a trade, because you're effectively swapping your skills or swapping your time for money. Now, as property investors, we don't fall into that. Even if you own property in your own name, if you own property in your own name, you're still counted as self-employed. However, it's a different type of self-employment because it's an investing employment. So investing and trade fall into two different groups. So if you've got property in your own name and you wondered whether you could access the government self-employed scheme, unfortunately you can't, because your income comes from investing, not trading. So your business won't actually count. Unless you have your own self-employed business in which you earn less than £50,000 and 50% of your income or more comes from your self-employed trading business. But I don't want to talk in detail about that today because I'm really more interested in this other area, which is if you have a limited company. Following Section 24 and the government's decision to change the way that property investors are taxed, of course, many of us started up limited companies to invest in. And now, with coronavirus, we're finding that actually there's a lot more complications and things that we cannot claim because we now use a limited company. So I just want to outline what you can claim. Now, if you've got commercial property within your limited company, you may have a separate limited company in which you're investing in commercial property. Two things you should be aware of. Number one is that tenants are protected for 3 months from being evicted if they are in commercial property. That's even if they have an FRI lease, which is a full repairing and insuring lease. Normally those leases can be ended very quickly if the tenant doesn't pay rent. But under the new rules, commercial tenants are protected from eviction as well. Similar, identically to residential. But commercial tenants generally will be paying business rates. That most of them will pay some level of business rates. And the government have told local authorities to issue grants for people who are paying business rates. So in fact, your commercial tenant may well be able to access a grant to pay their business rates, which in turn will help them to pay the rent on the building. The government have also been very clear with commercial tenants to say they still owe their rent. They can't be evicted, but they still need to pay their rent. But maybe you don't have any commercial property, in which case that too is irrelevant. So that's irrelevant, and that is irrelevant. Okay, so what is actually relevant for you then? Well, if you are a limited company, if you have your own limited company and you're investing in residential property, the first area that you'll probably be thinking about is your own income, your own pay. And generally there are three ways in which you might pay yourself, in which we pay ourselves. Now, if you started your business and you gave it a loan, your business is a separate entity from yourself, so you may have had some seed funding, 50, 100, however much thousands of pounds that you've put into that limited company. That's called a director's loan that you've put in to the business. Now, over the first few years, in the time in which you're setting up your business and perhaps finding properties, refurbishing them and letting them out, you might start to make some profit. You might have some money left in the company account every month, and you've been taking that out of the company account. Now, if that money is coming off your balance sheet, that's effectively a repayment of that loan that you initially made into the business. So you're repaying your money to yourself. It's a repayment of a loan. That is not a director's loan. That's something slightly different, but it's a repayment of a loan that you've made into the business. So that's simply a loan repayment. Now, the government are not offering any help on that. So if you've been taking a few £1,000s a month back from your initial loan, you won't get any help from the government on that one. The second way that you might be drawing money out of your company is through dividends. Now, dividends usually have to be declared after profit has been declared, and through the year you might accrue those, and then at the end of the year a final dividend is announced, and then you can officially take those as your dividends based on the profit of the year. Again, the government have said there will be no help for people taking dividends. So two areas which we cannot benefit from: repayment of director's loan and dividends. Now, you might, however, have paid yourself under PAYE. PAYE, pay as you earn, is the government's way of ensuring that everybody pays a little bit into the system. And if you, on the 28th of February, were paying yourself the lower earnings limit, which is about £120 a week, or more, you will be entitled to getting something from the government if you decide to furlough, and I'll come to that in a minute. So the key metrics for this, the key criteria, is that as of the 28th of February, you are on your company's PAYE scheme, and you are paying yourself at least the lower earnings limit, which allows you to qualify for national insurance. If you decide to furlough yourself, you can then apply for 80% of that lower earnings limit from the government. Now, it'll only be about £100 a week. You know, you're not going to make lots of money from it, but that is a possibility. However, I would say about furlough, HMRC are concerned about company directors who may be a sole company director of a business and suddenly decide, oh, I think I'll go on furlough because then I can get 80% of my lower earnings limit paid. You have to make a decision whether you are really furloughing yourself or whether you're just taking the money. And if you're taking the money, the government will be really clamping down on directors who do that because it's fraud. Furlough means that you are not accessing any income generating opportunities, that you are not doing any trading business, that you're not actively growing the business or growing the company. So if you can say with volition and truth that that's, you're not doing that and you are literally just kind of stepping back as far as possible in your business, then you can qualify for furlough. But please be aware that this is a bit of a moral decision for people to make. And there may be people who think it's okay to go on furlough but still carry on running their business as normal. It isn't. And HMRC are going to be really looking for signs that people are still running their business and claiming the furlough payment. Now, the next thing that you can, of course, be entitled to is a loan. And I know we've all heard about the government's coronavirus business interruption loan scheme. So if you don't qualify for any of these, because maybe you don't pay yourself at that limit, and we know dividends are not entitled to any help, and neither is if you're repaying yourself a loan, what are you going to do? You might be saying, but Wendy, my cash flow is reduced because my tenants are paying lower levels of rent. I've been to my mortgage provider and I'm still waiting to be able to access a mortgage holiday. So what can you do? Well, in any business where there's a cash flow premium, the first thing would be to approach the bank to get a loan. Now, as you know, if you've been following the news, Rishi Sunak announced the fact that there was going to be this fantastic new coronavirus business interruption loan scheme, but actually all the rules changed when he realised that lots of people were not accessing the money because banks hadn't really prepared and they were making some of the criteria very hard for small businesses to be able to access. Now, I've put together an information sheet. I posted it on the group just a few minutes before doing the video. If you look on that sheet, it will tell you the criteria that you need to meet to be able to access those loans and the rules about accessing the loan. Now, the government are saying that they will pay the interest for 12 months on the loan, which is brilliant, and you can have the loan for up to 6 years. But, and there's a big but here, you've got to demonstrate that your business is already viable. So if it's a new business that you've started in the last 12 months or so, there's a risk you may not get that loan. Ideally, banks will be looking for businesses that have been established for 3 years or more, that you've got accounts, that you've got a cash flow forecast, that you've got a business plan. They'll be asking for documentary evidence that your business is viable. So again, unfortunately, if you are a new property business, it might be that you cannot benefit from any loan. Furlough, if you have staff, this is another area to look at, as well as yourself as a director. If you employ anybody, maybe a cleaner or a gardener or a maintenance person, if they're actually employed and on PAYE, you can benefit from furloughing them and lay them off and get 80%. And the government are going to be releasing more information about that furlough scheme because at the moment it's still not quite live. You still pay your employee and then you'll have to claim back the money from the government. So what actually is left for you? Well, there's two things that you can do. Number one, go to your mortgage provider and ask for a holiday. And most mortgage providers are being very flexible about this. It might be easier for you to talk about your residential property. If you own your own home, to get a residential mortgage holiday. That might just see you over the next 3 months. The government are limiting to a lot of this funding to the next 3 months, but watch this space. We'll see if that really happens or not, or whether they have to extend it. And then the final area is tax. HMRC have been told by the government that they have to be much more flexible about individual cases where people are struggling to pay their tax. So if you've got a corporation tax bill or you've got a payment on account due in July for your own personal tax, or maybe you may be VAT registered if you have a business that is working in a sector which is VATable, which mostly residential property is not, but if you do, all of those things can be deferred. So that is a short-term way of helping you with your cash flow. Now, I know this isn't great news. I know that you might be watching this and think, well, that's great, Wendy, because I don't qualify for any of the things that other people can get. And now I'm in a position where I've got property and cash is getting very tight. I come back to some of the earlier points I made on other videos, which you can go and have a look at. Manage your cash flow weekly. Stay on top of your business. Information is always better than no information because it means you can make wise and sound decisions. And remember, this is a difficult time for everybody. If you need some support and help because maybe you're fearful or anxious about the way ahead, then please, please, please get in touch. Please, please, please be part of what's going on in this group. But I would urge you to take a careful, considerate look at your own financial situation and see where you can make savings and where you can make your money stretch further, because you know that necessity is the mother of invention. And I absolutely believe in the ability of the human person, female or male, to overcome difficulties when we realise that we have strength and ability far bigger than our problems. So I hope this has been of use to you today. I hope it's clarified some of those things which you might have been confused about. Please feel free to get in touch. Do download the fact sheet for extra information, and I look forward to speaking to you all very soon. Thanks for joining.